Hey guys, tonight we're going to do something a little different. You're not just going to listen, you're going to walk with me through sand and silence under the pale watch of the desert moon. Our subject? The Great Pyramid of Giza. It's massive, older than almost anything you've ever touched, and so full of secrets that even the best scientists, the boldest adventurers, and the wildest conspiracy theorists haven't solved them all. Honestly, if you suddenly woke up inside that pyramid right now, with nothing but a flashlight and your questionable sense of direction, you probably wouldn't survive 5 minutes. But hey, at least you'd make for a cool headline. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you do, leave a comment telling me your local time and where you're tuning in from. It's always wild to imagine us all connected across the world, drifting off together to the same story. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The desert isn't quiet in the way you expect. As you walk, the sand seems to whisper under your feet, carrying every step away like gossip in a tiny village. Overhead, the sky is black velvet, sprayed with stars, and you notice how low and near they feel, as if you could pluck one down like a lamp for your nightstand. And then, there it is, the pyramid. A silhouette so sharp against the horizon that it looks less like stone and more like some glitch in reality. A geometry that shouldn't exist in a world built on wind and dust. You pause because there's a strange weight to the air. It's not just size, you've seen skyscrapers, stadiums, mountains. This feels different. The pyramid doesn't tower over you with arrogance. It sits, patient, like a chess master who has already won the game and doesn't need to explain how. Step closer. The blocks are bigger than you want them to be. You had this idea they were like bricks, something a team of buff guys could lug around with a grunt and some teamwork. No, each block is about the size of a small car, weighing as much as an elephant who's been hitting the all-you-can-eat salad bar. And the pyramid isn't made of a few dozen of these, it's made of over 2 million. That math alone should make you dizzy. You imagine the workers, barefoot, sunburnt, sweating under the unrelenting sun of 2500 BCE, dragging these stones across wooden sledges, pouring water on the sand to make it slick, grunting in unison as ropes bite into their palms. Archaeologists say it wasn't slaves, as Hollywood loves to dramatize, but teams of skilled laborers, rotating in and out, fed on bread, beer, and onions. Yes, the onions. Not exactly protein shakes, but hey, it worked. The thing is, you can't help but wonder, how? Not just physically, but mentally. Who wakes up one day and says, yeah, let's stack 2.3 million blocks into a shape so precise that even with modern laser tools, we'd struggle to beat it? That's where Pharaoh Khufu enters the stage. Ambitious doesn't even begin to cover him. Imagine you're Khufu. You sit on your throne, gold catching the sunlight, priests murmuring incantations in smoky chambers. You're not building a house. You're not even building a palace. You're building eternity. To the ancient Egyptians, life wasn't about these 50 or 60 short years on Earth. It was about the forever that came after. The afterlife was the real deal, the bonus level, the VIP lounge. And the pyramid? That was your boarding pass. But boarding passes usually don't require, 30 years of national effort quarrying stone, aligning it so perfectly with the cardinal directions that your compass blushes with embarrassment. The Great Pyramid is aligned almost exactly to true north, like within 3/60ths of a degree. How? No GPS, no drones, not even a half-decent protractor from your middle school geometry class. Just stars, patience, and some math that would scare your accountant. As you tilt your head back, you try to see the tip. Imagine it capped in gleaming white limestone, polished to shine so brightly under the sun that the pyramid would have glared like a spotlight, visible from miles away. Today, it's rougher, weathered, the casing stones mostly stolen or eroded, but the skeleton remains. And somehow, that bare skeleton still looks alive. The air is cool tonight, but your mind drifts to the heat of day, when tourists swarm the base. They press their hands against the blocks, trying to feel history, while local guides spin stories half true, half sales pitch. Did you know? One of them says, if you stretched all the stones in a line, it would circle the earth twice? You chuckle. That's not true, not even close, but it doesn't matter. Myths cling to the pyramid like dust to your sandals. And myths are sometimes more powerful than facts, because standing here, even in imagination, you can't help but feel a flicker of doubt. Maybe Khufu didn't build this with just ropes and sledges. Maybe there was something else. A trick, a lost technology, or, if you want to make the History Channel proud, a little extraterrestrial assistance. That's the thing. The pyramid doesn't just challenge your sense of scale. It challenges your sense of possibility. The truth is, even archaeologists still argue. Some say ramps spiraled around the outside. Others picture a giant internal ramp, corkscrewing inside the walls. And there are wild new ideas, hydraulic lifts, counterweights, pulleys that would look right at home in a modern construction site. None of them have been proven. And so, you're left with the same question that workers whispered thousands of years ago as they pulled another block into place. How in the name of RA are we doing this? You walk along the base. It's not smooth, it's jagged, the blocks jutting in and out, but they interlock with a precision that makes you squint. Some gaps are thinner than your credit card. Without mortar, just stone kissing stone. If you had a piece of paper, you could barely slip it between them. You think about your kitchen tiles, how one is always crooked, and you feel a little embarrassed on behalf of modern humanity. As you trace your fingers along the surface, you notice faint markings, chisel scars, the human fingerprints of forgotten masons. No one carved their Instagram handle here, but these scratches are the closest thing they had. Proof that men once sweated, cursed, and laughed while stacking a future monument. The desert wind picks up, brushing against your face, carrying a taste of dust. And you think about time. These stones have seen more than 50 centuries pass. Empires have risen, collapsed, risen again. Napoleon marched here. World War soldiers camped nearby. Tourists came with cameras, with selfie sticks, with drones buzzing like mechanical bees. And still, the pyramid just sits, like the world's most stubborn grandparent, unbothered by the drama of human history. Somewhere in the dark, a camel grunts. You smile because camels have always been here. Pharaohs, generals, influencers, they come and go. The camels stay. The pyramid stays. You're just visiting. But tonight, you get to stay longer. Not as a tourist, but as a witness. You've only touched the surface, literally. You haven't even stepped inside yet. And you know, deep in your bones, that the outside grandeur is just the trailer. The movie begins once you slip into those narrow corridors. Once the cool stone swallows you whole, and once you realize that in here, time doesn't flow forward. It folds. You take a deep breath, and the desert exhales back, as if the pyramid itself has been waiting for you to arrive. The entrance isn't glamorous. You might expect a grand doorway, golden arches, maybe a red carpet. Nope. What greets you is a jagged opening hacked into the side by treasure hunters 1,000 years after Khufu's burial. The original entrance, perfectly aligned and tucked higher up, was sealed long ago. But you're not picky. You duck your head, crouch a little, and step into the pyramid's throat. The first thing you notice is the silence. Outside, the desert hums with wind, camel grunts, the faint laughter of distant tourists. In here, nothing. The kind of silence that makes your ears ring, that forces you to listen to your own breath as if it belongs to someone else. The air is cooler too and dry, like an ancient library where the books have turned to dust. You shuffle forward, running your hand along the wall. The stone is rough, unpolished, as if no one bothered to make this passage beautiful. This was never for ceremony. This was for function. The workers dug it, sweat dripping from their noses. Not so priests could chant, but so blocks could move and builders could climb. You picture them, lanterns flickering, voices echoing, as they carved their way deeper into eternity. The floor tilts downward, steep enough that your thighs complain after a few steps. You're walking hunched, knees bent, muttering under your breath like a gym bro who didn't sign up for leg day. And yet, there's a thrill because you know where this leads. This is the descending passage, an artery straight into the pyramid's heart. After what feels like forever, the tunnel flattens, opening into a low chamber. The small, cramped, almost disappointing. They call it the subterranean chamber, though unfinished basement might be more accurate. The walls are jagged, as if someone started a project and gave up. You run your fingers over tool marks left thousands of years ago, each stroke a frozen moment of human effort. Some believe this was meant to be Khufu's burial chamber, abandoned mid-plan when a grander vision took over. But here's the fun twist. Some archaeologists whisper about water, that the chamber might have been designed to flood, that underground channels beneath the pyramid could have carried the Nile's water right into its foundations. Was it ritual, engineering, an ancient experiment in hydraulics? No one can prove it, but the thought that water once flowed where your shoes crunch dust makes you blink twice. You lean against the wall, catching your breath. Imagine the workers down here, toiling by torchlight, the air thick with smoke and sweat. Then imagine Khufu changing his mind one morning. Nah, let's not bury me down there. Too creepy. Let's aim higher. You chuckle because kings could do that. Start over, guys, he might have said, sipping beer while his architects silently died inside. Back up the passage you climb, retracing your steps. Your calves burn, your back aches, and you realize this was daily life for the builders. No ergonomic breaks, no energy drinks, just onions and determination. And beer, lots of beer. Ancient Egyptians loved beer so much they paid workers in it. You wonder how many wobbly, half-tipsy masons carved these stones, giggling as they chipped away, maybe leaving tiny mistakes no one noticed. At a junction, you pause. Here it is, the ascending passage. Narrow, steep, almost claustrophobic. This is the path few travelers took in Khufu's time. Sealed off, hidden, reserved for the royal corpse and the daring architects who designed his stairway to heaven. You duck low and climb. The walls press in on your shoulders. The ceiling hovers inches above your head. You shuffle, your palms sliding on smooth stone polished by centuries of curious hands. And then, the ceiling rises. The space blossoms. You step into the grand gallery, and your breath catches. Imagine a hallway so tall you crane your neck until it aches. The walls angle inward, tier by tier, forming a corbelled roof that climbs like a staircase for giants. The floor tilts upward, polished smooth, and down the center runs a groove, a channel where perhaps wooden beams once sat, holding some elaborate contraption. The gallery stretches above you like a throat swallowing starlight. Here you feel small, smaller than when you stood at the base outside. Out there, the pyramid was a mountain. In here, it's a cathedral, and this cathedral has no saints, only geometry. Every block, every angle, every incline screams precision. You picture workers hauling giant granite plugs up here, sliding them into place, sealing chambers behind them like stone secrets. Take a step. Your footsteps echo, bouncing up and down, magnified into something ghostly. You half expect to hear whispers layered into the sound. as if the builders left their voices trapped in the acoustics. Some visitors swear the gallery hums when you chant, that its shape amplifies sound into a vibration that tickles your ribs. You test it, just a hum under your breath. The echo swells and you grin. Science or magic? Both, maybe. At the top, another passage waits. It leads higher still toward a chamber fit for a king. But before you climb, pause. Run your fingers over the grooves, the slots cut into stone. No one knows exactly what they were for. A pulley system? A wooden ramp? Some ritual device? Archaeologists argue, wave diagrams in each other's faces, and still the mystery yawns. The truth is locked away, stubborn as the granite itself. You sit down for a moment, sliding your back against the cool wall. You imagine being an ancient worker resting here, sweaty and sore, staring at the ceiling wondering what it all meant. Did they believe they were building for a god, or was it just a paycheck in onions and beer? Did they laugh at Khufu's ambitions, muttering, "This guy's nuts"? Or did they whisper to each other in awe, realizing they were creating something that would outlive them all? The torchlight flickers in your imagination, shadows climbing the corbelled walls like silent spirits. Outside, the desert sighs. In here, the pyramid holds its breath, waiting for you to stand again. You do, slowly, because you know what comes next, the king's chamber. But that's for later. For now, you linger in the grand gallery, this impossible canyon of stone, listening to your hum echo back at you like the pyramid itself is curious about your voice. And you think, if walls could talk, this place would never shut up. You reach the top of the grand gallery, chest rising and falling. For a moment, you stand there like someone who's just climbed out of a dream. The air feels different, thicker somehow, with a faint mineral tang that clings to the back of your throat. Ahead is a narrow passage that leads into the king's chamber. But before you step inside, your thoughts drift outward again, toward the man who ordered all this to exist, Pharaoh Khufu. You've seen statues of him, maybe. Actually, scratch that. You probably haven't. There's only one tiny ivory figurine that most scholars even agree represents him, barely taller than your thumb. The ruler of the most colossal monument on earth is remembered not by a towering statue, not by endless murals, but by a figurine you could lose down the couch cushions. If irony had a favorite ancient Egyptian, it might be Khufu. But don't let that fool you. Khufu was no lightweight. He was the second king of Egypt's fourth dynasty, ruling around 2589 BCE. His reign stretched over 2 decades, maybe more. In that time, he decided to outdo everyone who came before him. His father, Sneferu, had already experimented with pyramid building, messy experiments, mind you. One bent pyramid, looking like an architect had second thoughts halfway through. And another, the Red Pyramid, which finally hit the perfect angle. Khufu inherited that knowledge and said, "Cool. Now watch me go bigger." You imagine him in his palace, shaded by tall palm trees, the Nile glittering in the distance. Priests whispering rituals, courtiers bowing low, scribes scratching notes onto papyrus. In that world, Pharaoh wasn't just king, he was divine. The living embodiment of Horus, the falcon god. The mediator between people and the cosmos. If you had a problem, you didn't just take it to Pharaoh. You believed Pharaoh's will could bend the universe. So of course, Khufu needed a tomb that wasn't just a tomb. It had to be a bridge, a stairway, a launch pad for a soul that would one day sail into the sky with Ra, the sun god. To the Egyptians, death wasn't an ending. It was more like moving houses, except your new place was eternal, full of cosmic parties, and guarded by gods who might eat your heart if it weighed too heavy with sin. The pyramid was built for that journey, and Khufu wasn't modest about it. The Great Pyramid wasn't just the tallest building of the ancient world. It held that record for almost 4,000 years. 4,000 years. That's like building a skyscraper today and having it remain unmatched until the year 6000. You'd feel smug too. But who was he, really? The truth is, Khufu is a shadow to us. Ancient Greek historians like Herodotus painted him as cruel, a tyrant who closed temples and forced people into endless labor. Egyptian sources are quieter, eerily so, as if his legacy was swallowed by the very stones meant to immortalize him. Some scholars think later dynasties deliberately downplayed his memory, preferring to honor kings who seemed less ruthless. History can be petty like that. You take a breath, fingers brushing the wall of the passage, and you imagine Khufu's eyes. Did he ever stand here during construction? Did he ever walk this very spot, dust clinging to his sandals, hearing the echo of tools and voices bouncing through unfinished corridors? Or was he too regal, too removed, leaving details to architects and overseers while he stayed in palaces sipping date wine? One thing's certain, he left his mark. Even without inscriptions, without murals, the pyramid itself is his biography. It says, "Here was a man who dared to order millions of tons of stone to rise against gravity. Here was a man who believed eternity could be engineered." And here's an odd fact. Archaeologists have never found Khufu's mummy. The sarcophagus in the king's chamber is empty. Some believe looters snatched his body centuries ago. Others think maybe he was never buried here at all, that the pyramid was a symbol, not a tomb. A few fringe theorists even whisper that the body of Khufu is still hidden in some secret chamber, waiting in silence as centuries tick by. Historians still argue. Was he buried here and stolen? Was he elsewhere? Did he plan a decoy? You can almost hear the bickering across time, like a faculty meeting that never ends. The truth lies somewhere behind the stone, smugly refusing to step forward. You imagine him now, phantom on his cedar throne, draped in linen, gold jewelry glinting in the torchlight. A priest waves incense, the smoke curling like snakes. Outside, the sun beats on the Nile. Inside, Khufu whispers to his architects, "Make me something eternal." And they did. You laugh softly to yourself, because here you are, thousands of years later, still talking about him. His personality might be lost, his statues rare, his mummy missing, but his ambition, that survived. In limestone and granite, in corridors and chambers, in the very air pressing against your lungs as you stand at the edge of his most sacred space. You feel it now, how ambition itself has mass, presses against you as tangibly as the stone. You're not just walking through tunnels, you're walking through someone's dream, hardened into rock. And whether Khufu was cruel or brilliant, saint or tyrant, he succeeded. You're here, and you're listening. You crouch once more, ducking through that narrow passage at the end of the grand gallery. But instead of pushing into the king's chamber just yet, your mind drifts backward out through the pyramid's walls, as if your thoughts slip between the cracks of limestone, returning to the outside world, back to the beginning, back to the construction site itself, humming with life and sweat along the banks of the Nile. Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine the river glimmering in the sun, wide and steady, carrying barges loaded with stone. The water slaps against the hulls. Oars creak. Men chant in rhythm as they row. That's where it all started. Not here in the desert, but at quarries far away. Limestone from Tura, granite from Aswan, hundreds of miles to the south. Picture those red granite blocks, some weighing as much as 50 tons, dragged downriver like oversized hitchhikers who refuse to pay for gas money. You step into that scene, the year somewhere around 2580 BCE. The sun is brutal, making you squint until tears sting your eyes. Workers shout, their voices bouncing off the riverbanks. Overseers bark orders, some with sticks in hand, gesturing more than whipping, though the line feels blurry on bad days. The worksite is a city unto itself. Thousands of people bustling. Quarrymen hacking stone with copper chisels, haulers straining against ropes, bakers kneading dough, brewers stirring vats of beer. Yes, beer again. Ancient Egyptians considered it liquid nutrition, safer than water, and more fun. Each worker received daily rations, about a gallon a day. Imagine dragging rocks under the sun, slightly buzzed. It's almost a miracle the pyramid doesn't lean to one side. You walk past their living quarters. Rows of mud brick houses, smoke curling from ovens, children running between doorways. Excavations uncovered cattle bones, fish bones, traces of bread ovens, proof these weren't starving slaves, but well-fed laborers. You smile at the thought of a worker biting into bread, brushing crumbs from his beard, and muttering, "Only 2 million blocks to go. Easy." Now the logistics. How do you move a stone block from quarry to pyramid? Picture sledges, big wooden runners shaped like skis. Dozens of men harness themselves with ropes, dragging inch by inch. On dry sand, impossible. But here's the genius trick. Workers poured water ahead of the sledge. Wet sand packs tighter, reducing friction by almost half. A simple discovery, turning the impossible into merely exhausting. Try to imagine the sound. Ropes creaking, sandals grinding, men chanting, dust sticking to sweaty backs, the block sliding forward with a groan, as if the earth itself complains. The process repeats across flat ground, up ramps toward the rising pyramid. Ah, the ramps. Now there's a puzzle that drives archaeologists into heated debates. Were they straight ramps stretching hundreds of meters? Spiral ramps wrapping around the pyramid's exterior? Or internal ramps hidden inside? Each theory has merits and flaws. Straight ramps would require insane material. Spiral ramps obscure corners, making precision hard. Internal ramps? Ingenious, but unproven. Still, whichever system they used, it worked. Stone after stone, hauled into place with teamwork and stubbornness. Some blocks even bear quarry marks. Red hieroglyphs naming gangs with nicknames like Friends of Khufu. You can almost hear them joking. Hey, Friends of Khufu, faster. The drunkards of Menkor are beating us today. Workplace rivalry, ancient edition. You wander through the imagined site, sandals crunching gravel, and you realize this wasn't a grim slave camp. It was organized, communal, buzzing with pride. Skilled laborers, artisans, engineers, cooks, bakers, brewers. An entire economy swirling around one project. Building a pyramid wasn't just about stone. It was about people. Tens of thousands of lives woven into one colossal task. You pause by the river again. A barge bumps ashore, ropes straining as men unload granite. It gleams in the sun, dark and heavy, destined for the king's chamber. To think of its journey, from Aswan's quarries, floated down the Nile, hauled across land, dragged up ramps, slid into place, is enough to make your muscles ache in sympathy. And yet they did it, year after year, stone after stone. Scholars estimate about 20 years to complete the Great Pyramid. 20 years. Longer than most of your teachers kept the same hairstyle. Whole generations grew up watching it rise, layer by layer. You wipe imaginary sweat, laughing quietly. If you were there, you'd last an hour before begging for a scribe's desk job, which had hazards too, like back pain from endless writing. But at least papyrus doesn't weigh 2 tons. As the sun dips, The site quiets. Fires lit, smoke curling upward. Workers gather, tearing bread, sipping beer, laughing. A musician strums, someone claps, children chase each other through dust. For them, this was life, not history, not legend. Just life. Tomorrow they'll haul again, shout again, sweat again. Little by little, their labor shapes eternity. You stand at the edge, watching twilight fall. The river glows gold. The pyramid's skeleton catches fire in the last rays. And you think, no blueprints, no cranes, no engines, no computers. Just people, thousands of them, driven by duty, ambition, maybe faith, maybe fear. And somehow, improbably, they did it. You breathe deeply, tasting the Nile's cool air. In your chest, you carry the rhythm of their chants, the grit of their sweat, the strange mix of exhaustion and pride that must have hummed through the camp at night. And as you step back toward the pyramid's shadow, you realize you've started to feel what they must have felt. Awe, not just at what they were building, but at the fact they were building it at all. You pause at the edge of the workers' village, where the smoke from the evening fires curls into the desert sky. The pyramid looms in the distance, half complete, its skeletal terraces catching the starlight. But here, life is warm, messy, and loud, so much more human than the cold precision of stone. If you want to understand the Great Pyramid, you can't just stare at its geometry. You have to walk among the people who bled for it. You duck into a narrow lane between mud brick houses. The walls are rough, patched with straw, the air thick with the smell of baking bread. Someone laughs, a deep, belly laugh that rolls out of a doorway like music. You peek inside. A group of workers sits cross-legged around a clay dish piled with bread and onions, passing around a jug of beer. One of them cracks a joke about the Friends of Khufu gang always being late, and the room erupts with chuckles. You don't catch the exact words, but humor translates across millennia. Yes, onions again. They were everywhere, cheap, filling, and surprisingly nutritious. Archaeologists have even found garlic and radishes in workers' graves, as if their favorite snacks followed them into eternity. You bite into an imaginary onion and wince. Sharp, pungent, almost painful. No wonder the breath of the pyramid's builders could probably knock out a camel. You laugh to yourself because here in this dusty room, these men don't feel like faceless laborers. They feel like coworkers you'd complain with at lunch break. Step outside again, and you see kids darting between legs, chasing each other with shrieks of delight. Women stir pots over fires, their hair tied back, eyes bright. Dogs scavenge at the edges of the camp. This isn't the grim, whip-cracked image Hollywood loves. It's a town. A bustling, temporary town built for a singular purpose. Alive with noise, gossip, and love. You stop near the bakery. Archaeologists uncovered massive bread ovens here, capable of churning out thousands of loaves every day. Imagine the heat, the sweat, the flour sticking to your skin as you knead dough hour after hour. And the brewery, the brewery. Huge vats of bubbling beer, smelling yeasty and sour. Workers earned rations measured in jugs, and you know at least a few of them stumbled home each night, singing off-key songs about Khufu's glorious chin. Life wasn't all beer and onions, of course. Injuries were common, broken bones, strained backs, crushed fingers. But here's the fascinating part. Excavations revealed healed fractures. Meaning, when a worker broke his leg, he didn't just get left to die in the sand. He was cared for, bandaged, fed until he recovered. That alone changes everything. These weren't disposable slaves. They were valued members of a workforce, looked after by their community. You wander to the edge of the cemetery, where tombs of supervisors rise a little higher than those of ordinary workers. Inscriptions honor them, offering glimpses of pride. You imagine a foreman boasting, "I led the hauling of the granite blocks. May Osiris bless me. Even in death, people wanted credit for their role in the greatest project of all time. It's like carving on your tombstone, helped pour the concrete for the Empire State Building. Back in the village, night settles fully. Torches glow, laughter drifts on the breeze, and someone plays a reed flute, its high notes floating into the dark. You sit cross-legged with a group of men, sipping a cup of thin beer, the taste sour but comforting. One of them leans toward you, whispering a rumor. They say Khufu will live forever. The pyramid will keep his soul safe. Another snorts, wiping foam from his beard. Or maybe he's just building the world's biggest onion cellar. You grin, because even here in the shadow of eternity, people joked. They complained about sore backs, bragged about pulling blocks faster than the other crews, rolled their eyes at bosses. Humanity doesn't change. We grumble, we laugh, we find ways to make unbearable work bearable. As the fire crackles, you glance at the pyramid rising in the distance. From here, it doesn't look like geometry. It looks like a mountain of effort, a million small moments stacked together. Every laugh, every onion, every broken bone healed, it all sits in those stones. You realize that the pyramid isn't just Khufu's monument. It's theirs. And tomorrow, when dawn burns the horizon, they'll march out again. Ropes over their shoulders, voices chanting in rhythm. Another block, another layer. A lifetime of labor piece by piece. You stand slowly, brushing dust from your knees, and the desert night swallows the sounds behind you. You walk toward the pyramid's shadow once more, carrying the echo of their laughter in your chest. Because history isn't just stones. It's the people who left their fingerprints on them. And you can almost feel their fingerprints now, pressed into your palms. The morning comes too soon. The workers stir in their reed mats, groaning, rubbing eyes heavy with sleep. Smoke rises from breakfast fires, and already the overseers are barking orders. You trail behind them, barefoot in the sand, and the first rays of the sun make the pyramid glow, like a golden staircase to the sky. Today, you're following the stones themselves, watching how blocks the size of small cars somehow crawl upward into that impossible shape. At first glance, it looks absurd. Each limestone block weighs more than a pickup truck. No cranes, no forklifts, no hydraulics, just ropes, wooden sledges, and sheer human determination. You watch a team line up behind one sledge, shoulders hunched, ropes cutting into their palms. With a shout, they heave forward, dragging the block over sand slicked with water. Yes, water. Archaeologists found that pouring water over sand reduces friction by almost half. Imagine inventing physics hacks in the Bronze Age, just so your biceps don't explode. You chuckle. Maybe the workers were the first to say, "Work smarter, not harder." The stone jerks forward, inch by inch, guided onto a wooden ramp. Here's where theories split like the branches of the Nile. Some believe a giant straight ramp stretched from the base to the summit, requiring more material than the pyramid itself. Others imagine a zigzagging staircase ramp wrapped around the outside. And then there are the spiral believers, ramps curling like a snail shell inside the pyramid skeleton. The frustrating truth? No one knows for certain. The ramps are gone, dismantled long ago. All that's left is speculation, and fragments of ancient graffiti that suggest, yes, these people had some kind of ingenious system. You squint up at the current ramp, rough and steep. Men chant in rhythm as they pull, the sound almost hypnotic. It's like CrossFit, you think? Only instead of bragging about deadlifts, these guys are building the most precise monument in history. The block finally lurches onto its platform, greeted by cheers. Dust fills your throat, sweat stings your eyes. Even as an observer, you feel the exhaustion in your bones. Pause here and picture the sheer logistics. One block laid every 2 or 3 minutes for decades. Teams of hundreds working in shifts, sunup to sundown, synchronized like gears in a colossal machine. Food deliveries, water hauls, tools sharpened, sledges repaired. It's less like ancient mysticism, and more like a construction site managed by the world's first project managers. The clipboard hasn't been invented yet, but you can see it in the overseer's glare. You climb higher, following another team. The pyramid's surface beneath your feet is rough, unfinished, still waiting for its smooth limestone casing. You grip the rope, helping them haul, at least pretending to. Your muscles strain, your breath rasps, and you realize, if you lived here, you'd last about 12 minutes. Maybe 15 if you skipped leg day less often. You mutter, "Yeah, I'd be the guy assigned to fetch onions, not drag stones." At the ramp's edge, a man gestures for the block to be levered into place. Wooden beams wedge beneath, shoulders heave, and with one final grunt, the stone slides neatly into alignment. That's the real marvel, the precision. Even without modern tools, these workers aligned millions of blocks so tightly that you can't slide a credit card between them. And you thought your IKEA bookshelf was hard. But here's a detail most people miss. The blocks weren't all massive. The pyramid's core contains smaller, irregular stones packed around the giants. The artistry was in balancing speed with stability. Big stones where strength mattered, filler where they could cut corners. Think of it as ancient engineering blended with pragmatic shortcuts, the kind you'd only notice if you crawled through the dusty interior thousands of years later. And about that casing, the brilliant white Tura limestone that once covered the whole pyramid. In its prime, the Great Pyramid didn't look like a pile of rugged tan stones. It gleamed. It reflected sunlight so fiercely that, from miles away, it would have looked like a beacon, maybe even blinding at noon. Some travelers later described it as a mountain of light. Imagine standing in the desert and seeing that glow, like a god dropped a mirror in the sand. Today the casing is mostly gone, stolen for mosques and palaces, but close your eyes and you can almost feel the dazzle burning against your eyelids. You rest at the top of the ramp, panting, the Nile shimmering in the distance. Workers pass around clay mugs of water, sharing quick jokes. One nudges another. "Bet my block goes up faster than yours tomorrow." This playful rivalry, but you sense the pride underneath. Each stone isn't just dead weight. It's a signature, proof that they existed. And yet, even as you admire their grit, you can't help wondering, was it enough? Could manpower alone explain such perfection? Some fringe thinkers whisper about lost technologies, forgotten machines, or help from beyond the stars. You smile. Ancient alien memes weren't invented by TikTok. They've been around since Victorian dinner parties. But here, in the heat and dust, you don't need aliens. You just need people, tired, sunburnt, stubborn people, pulling together day after day. You gaze upward, toward the unfinished summit, and it hits you. This is less about one pharaoh's eternity and more about the endurance of collective will. Every ramp, every chant, every tug on the rope was a vote of faith. Faith in gods, in kings, in the belief that backbreaking labor could carve eternity from stone. The block locks into place with a thud, echoing through the pyramid's bones. You wipe your forehead, heart pounding, and in that moment, you're not just an observer. You're part of the crew, part of the story. Another anonymous back among thousands, sweating under the Egyptian sun, building something that will outlive every onion, every beer jug, every whispered complaint. And as you stumble back down the ramp, you realize eternity isn't silent. It was built to the rhythm of human voices, straining against ropes, singing in dust. The sun dips lower, shadows stretch long across the desert, and for the first time you're invited to step away from the noise of the construction yard. A foreman gestures with a torch, its flame sputtering against the wind, and points you toward a yawning black opening cut into the pyramid's side. You hesitate. Outside, there's dust, noise, the scent of sweat and stone. Inside, silence, darkness, and that particular kind of cold, the kind that feels like stepping into a basement no one's visited for centuries. You duck low, shoulders brushing stone as you pass through the descending corridor. The walls press close, the ceiling just above your head, polished smooth in some places, left rough in others. The air is stale, older than anything you've ever breathed. Each footstep echoes back at you, bouncing like whispers through the tunnel. For a moment, you swear you hear voices, workers who laid these stones, priests chanting spells, maybe just your own blood rushing in your ears. Doesn't matter. You keep walking. The torch flickers over hieroglyphs scratched hastily into the stone. Little doodles of boats, symbols of crews, even the names of work gangs. They're not grand inscriptions for tourists, they're graffiti. Imagine future archaeologists discovering Steve was here, scrawled on the back of your office cubicle wall, and treating it like sacred scripture. That's the flavor here, ordinary men leaving a mark in an eternal monument. The corridor tilts downward at a sharp angle, and your thighs burn as you crouch step along. This is the descending passage, sliding like a chute into the earth beneath the pyramid. The polished limestone floor is slick under your sandals, and you grip the walls for balance. Archaeologists debate why it plunges so steeply. Some say it was a symbolic passage to the underworld. Others think it was a practical access route to the earliest burial chamber. The truth? Well, the builders didn't leave us blueprints, and the only instruction manual is written in the stone itself. At last, you reach a small, low-ceiling chamber carved directly into the bedrock, the so-called subterranean chamber. It's raw, unfinished, like the builders started carving and then changed their minds. You run your hand along jagged walls, feel the tool marks still visible after 4,500 years. Dust clings to your fingers, ancient dust older than most civilizations you've ever heard of. You whisper, "I'm basically breathing pharaoh air." Then you cough, because eternity tastes like chalk. Why leave this chamber incomplete? No one knows. Maybe Khufu's architects abandoned the idea of placing his tomb underground and decided to move it higher up. Maybe it was just a backup plan. Maybe they simply ran out of patience, like when you start a DIY project and shove it into the closet halfway through. Historians argue, but no answer satisfies. The unfinished chamber remains a riddle, a ghost of a plan that never happened. You retrace your steps up the steep passage, torchlight trembling across the walls. Sweat drips down your back despite the chill. At the intersection, you notice a hidden upward shaft, the ascending passage. You crouch and climb into it, heart hammering. The ceiling is so low you have to bend at the waist, practically crawling, knees aching on the stone floor. Each meter feels like a challenge, a test. And maybe that's the point. Ancient builders loved rituals that strained the body as much as the spirit. If you're gasping by the time you reach the top, maybe you're more worthy of standing before a king. Suddenly, the shaft opens into a breathtaking hallway, the Grand Gallery. Your jaw drops. The ceiling soars above you, nearly 30 feet high, corbelled stones stacked like a giant stone accordion. The walls lean inward, tier by tier, narrowing as they rise, creating a space that feels less like a hallway and more like a cathedral frozen in limestone. The acoustics are strange. Your breath echoes back at you, magnified, distorted. If you whisper, the sound ripples upward like smoke. Archaeologists believe the gallery served as a kind of architectural lung, redistributing weight from above and protecting the inner chambers. Others think it was a ceremonial route, a place where processions of priests might march in dim torchlight, chanting hymns that would reverberate off the stone. And then there are the fringe theorists, those who imagine the Grand Gallery as some sort of energy chamber humming with lost frequencies. You roll your eyes, but admit the space does feel charged, like standing inside the belly of a musical instrument too large to comprehend. Along the walls, you notice slots cut into the stone evenly spaced. Some scholars think wooden beams once rested there, scaffolding that allowed workers to haul up the granite blocks used in the king's chamber higher still. Others imagine they held symbolic fixtures, part of some vanished ritual. What's certain is that the gallery was functional as well as majestic, a blend of engineering and ceremony, sweat and symbolism. You pause halfway up, catching your breath. The air is still heavy, tinged with that mineral scent of old stone. Your torch flame dances wildly, and in that jittering light, the gallery seems alive. You picture lines of men trudging up the slope, ropes biting into their shoulders, dragging sledges with granite beams weighing 70 tons each. They chant in unison, their footsteps a drumbeat, their songs bouncing around the chamber until the whole pyramid vibrated with human sound. You mutter to yourself, "I'd complain about moving a couch up 3 flights of stairs, and here they are carrying a small mountain." At the top of the gallery, the passage splits again. To your left lies the Queen's chamber, smaller, more intimate, lined with smooth limestone blocks. Despite the name, no queen was ever buried there. The title is a modern mislabel. Instead, the chamber may have been intended as Khufu's actual tomb, or a symbolic resting place for his ka, the vital essence of the soul. Tiny shafts run from the chamber at odd angles, too narrow for a person to crawl through, aimed toward the stars. Some say they were for ventilation, but really, ventilation in a sealed tomb? More likely, they were spiritual highways, cosmic straws pointing toward constellations sacred to the pharaoh. You kneel to peer into one of the shafts, darkness stretching endlessly, the smell of age wafting out. In 1993, a robotic camera was sent crawling inside and discovered a tiny stone door with copper fittings, like a secret sealed behind another secret. Later probes found even more doors. No one agrees on their purpose. Hidden chambers? Ritual obstacles? Or just architectural quirks? The mystery deepens, and you grin. It's like the pyramid is trolling us, for 1,500 years later, and it still refuses to reveal its hand. You lean back, resting against the cool stone, and listen. The pyramid has its own silence, not empty, but thick, like it remembers every sound ever made within. Workers' chants, priests' prayers, explorers' footsteps. Even your breathing feels like an intrusion. You close your eyes, hear the echo of history, and whisper, "Guess I'm not the first one to get lost in here." And somewhere, far above, the desert wind howls over the gleaming slopes of a monument that still guards more questions than answers. You climb the final steps of the grand gallery, lungs burning, torch spitting little sparks of fire that seem too small for such a cavernous space. At the top, there's a low, rectangular doorway so small it forces you to duck again, like the pyramid reminding you, "Hey, buddy, no matter how tall you feel, you're still just a guest here." You shuffle forward, hands brushing cool stone, and suddenly the ceiling drops low, claustrophobic. A narrow horizontal corridor. You crawl through, knees scraping the polished floor, until, without warning, the passage yawns open into a massive, perfectly cut rectangular chamber. The king's chamber. The air feels heavier, thicker, as if stone itself exhales around you. The granite blocks forming the walls gleam in the torchlight, each one fitted so tightly that even after 45 centuries, not a knife blade could slide between them. The room is stark, undecorated, no hieroglyphs, no painted murals, no gilded reliefs. Just smooth, silent granite, exuding power through simplicity. You can't help thinking, if Apple designed a tomb, this would be it. Minimalist, monolithic. At the far end rests a single, massive sarcophagus. Its reddish granite glows faintly in the firelight, carved from a single block, so large it couldn't possibly fit through the corridors you just crawled. Which means, of course, it was placed here during construction long before the pyramid was sealed. You lean over it, fingers grazing its rim, and feel the cool chill of eternity sink into your skin. It's empty now, but once. Maybe Khufu himself lay inside, wrapped in linen, protected by amulets, and surrounded by prayers that were supposed to last forever. Except, when modern explorers opened it, they found nothing. No mummy, no treasures, no golden mask. Just an empty box echoing with absence. Scholars argue endlessly. Was Khufu ever buried here at all? Did tomb robbers strip it bare before history even noticed? Or did the pharaoh play one last prank on us all, hiding his true resting place elsewhere, while letting his pyramid stand as the ultimate decoy? Above your head, unseen but vital, lie 5 narrow cavities stacked one atop another. These are the relieving chambers, spaces cut to redistribute the crushing weight of millions of tons of stone above. Without them, the chamber would have collapsed long ago. Their ceilings are made of gigantic granite beams, some weighing as much as 70 tons. Imagine placing those with nothing but ropes, wooden sledges, and sheer human stubbornness. It's the architectural equivalent of juggling bowling balls while standing on a ladder during an earthquake. Here's the fun twist. One of those upper chambers contains a graffiti scrawl left by the original workers. Painted in red ochre, it spells out crew names, like the Friends of Khufu. Not a royal inscription, not a priestly blessing, just a team label probably scratched on after a long workday. And because of that doodle, archaeologists finally confirmed, yes, this really was Khufu's pyramid. Without it, conspiracy theories would have had free rein forever. You stretch out on the cold granite floor, torch laid aside, and listen. The chamber has an acoustic quality unlike any place you've been. A hum builds when you speak. Notes reverberate longer than they should. Some visitors even claim to feel vibrations running through their bones when they chant here. Scientists tested the frequencies and found the chamber resonates with deep tones, amplifying sound in odd ways. Ritual space, accident of physics, or both. You clear your throat, hum a single low note, and feel the walls shiver back at you. Congratulations, you just jammed with a 4,500-year-old megaphone. Of course, alternative thinkers love this room. They insist the king's chamber wasn't for burials at all, but for energy. Power plant, they whisper, channeling the earth's vibrations through granite and limestone, harnessing cosmic rays like some prehistoric Tesla coil. You smirk. If the pharaohs really had wireless charging, they could have saved themselves a lot of candle wax. Still, it's hard to deny there's something uncanny here. You walk around the sarcophagus again, fingers trailing across its chipped rim. The edges show signs of force, as if someone tried to break in or out. That thought sends a delicious shiver up your spine. The granite box is too big to be removed, too stubborn to be ignored. So it remains like a riddle sitting smugly in the center of the room. Who were you really, Khufu? You murmur. And what secret did you bury or not bury here? The silence doesn't answer. The pyramid never does. You lie back, torch extinguished now, and let the darkness swallow you whole. Granite presses around from every side, its silence both suffocating and soothing. You imagine priests once filing into this chamber, carrying incense and chanting spells, filling the emptiness with sound and smoke. You imagine thieves crawling in centuries later, prying open the sarcophagus, only to find nothing but dust. You imagine yourself, here, tonight, your heartbeat syncing with the slow pulse of stone. It's not a tomb. It's not a chamber. It's a question, one carved so large you can walk inside it. And like every good question, it keeps you awake, even when your body begs for sleep. You wake, if you ever truly slept, on the granite floor of the king's chamber. The air feels even heavier now, stale but steady, as though it has never moved in thousands of years. Your torch sputters, and in the orange glow you notice something odd. Two narrow openings cut high into the chamber's walls, one on the north side, the other on the south. At first glance, they seem useless, tiny rectangular shafts just wide enough for a cat on a diet to squeeze through, and definitely too narrow for you. Archaeologists once called them air shafts. Sounds practical, right? Except they don't lead to the outside world. Some stop dead after a few dozen feet. Others tilt upward at curious angles. No air circulation, no ventilation. Instead, they point almost precisely toward certain stars. The southern shaft aligns with the belt of Orion, the celestial hunter the Egyptians linked with Osiris, lord of the underworld. The northern shaft aligns with the circumpolar stars, the imperishables that never set, symbols of eternity. You lean your head back against the granite and grin. Of course, Pharaoh Khufu would have his eternal resting place wired into the cosmos. If modern billionaires aim for space rockets, the pharaohs settled for the next best thing. Cosmic skylights guiding their souls straight to the heavens. Still, nobody can say with absolute certainty why the shafts exist. Ventilation, symbolic pathways for the soul, cosmic sightlines for rituals. Scholars still argue, and you imagine them waving their arms in lecture halls like rival magicians debating whose spell is stronger. The mystery remains stubbornly unsolved, like the pyramid's way of reminding us that human cleverness is no match for 4,500 years of silence. You crawl to the northern shaft's opening, pressing your cheek to the cool stone. You can't see much, just darkness thicker than the air behind you. In the 1990s, engineers sent little robots inside. Imagine a tiny mechanical scout, bumping and whirring through tunnels untouched since Khufu's reign. One robot reached a small door, complete with copper fittings, almost like a miniature gate to another secret chamber. When they drilled through, expecting treasure, they found another door. Classic pyramid prank. Even in death, Khufu keeps building cliffhangers. Later probes discovered markings, symbols, and even red paint on those hidden doors. Nothing flashy, just enigmatic hints, like sticky notes from the past saying, "Ha! Bet you didn't see this coming." Maddening and brilliant at once. The shafts invite theories the way honey invites flies. Some whisper they were acoustic channels, carrying chants or vibrations into the chamber. Others picture them as energy conduits, like cosmic USB cables plugging the pyramid into the universe. A few even claim they were designed for out-of-body travel, literal stargates guiding the pharaoh's Cospirit across the heavens. You smirk, picturing Khufu floating through space with zero training, while modern astronauts still need years of simulations just to float gracefully. You stretch out again, the granite pressing cool against your back, and imagine the night sky outside. In Khufu's time, Orion's belt would have hung above the southern horizon, gleaming like 3 cosmic buttons on the jacket of eternity. Did priests kneel here, eyes fixed on starlight funneled through these shafts, whispering invocations while the king's body rested below? Or were the shafts never meant for human eyes at all, just for the soul's secret departure route, invisible and silent? The idea chills you. The pharaoh might have designed his pyramid not only as a tomb, but as a celestial launch pad. Forget tomb raiding. This was soul raiding, cosmic boarding passes carved into stone. You roll to one side, chuckling softly. Imagine, after all this cosmic drama, that the shafts were nothing more than structural quirks. Maybe some overworked engineer just needed to lighten the load on the chamber's walls. And yet, those quirky angles match star alignments so neatly that coincidence feels like an understatement. Even skeptical historians admit the geometry is suspiciously intentional. The debate continues. You grin. That's the fun of it. If the shafts were too obvious, the story would be over. Instead, they tease, whispering across centuries. Maybe yes, maybe no. And you realize something strange. The pyramid works on you like it always intended, forcing you to look up literally and metaphorically. Those shafts, narrow and obscure, pull your gaze skyward. You start thinking of stars, eternity, the afterlife, and mysteries beyond your own lifespan. Khufu's architects knew what they were doing. They planted cosmic questions into the very stones. You blow out the last flicker of your torch. In the silence and the dark, you can almost see it, 3 bright stars lined up in Orion's belt, one shaft guiding your gaze to them. Another set of stars never setting, circling forever. Eternal routes for an eternal king. And maybe, just maybe, for you too. You descend again, your palms grazing the cool walls, your torchlight painting shaky strokes across the stone. The king's chamber fades behind you, its shafts pointing like invisible fingers to Orion and the eternal stars. But down here the direction is reversed. No skyward dreams, only a slow spiral toward the underworld. The passage narrows, pressing on your shoulders. You crouch, shuffle, breathe shallow. The granite above feels like a ceiling built to remind you just how small you are. You half expect some ancient trapdoor to drop and crush you like a bug on a kitchen tile. Don't worry. Archaeologists swear these passages were ceremonial, not booby-trapped. Then again, archaeologists also swore King Tut's tomb was the dullest of them all, right up until it wasn't. You reach what's called the Queen's Chamber, though no queen was ever buried here. The name stuck thanks to early explorers who assumed, naively, that a pyramid this size had to have multiple royal tenants, like some ancient high-rise. But no burial, no sarcophagus, no gilded coffin was ever found. Just smooth limestone walls, simple and undecorated, an odd contrast to the grandeur above. At first glance, it feels almost disappointing, like booking a 5-star hotel room and finding nothing but a mattress on the floor. But then you remember those strange little shafts you saw earlier? The Queen's Chamber has them too, hidden behind thin walls until modern robots nose them out. Same peculiar angles, same star-like alignments. Another puzzle layered into the stone. Why build a chamber with no body? Some scholars suggest it was a decoy, a false tomb to trick grave robbers. Others think it was a symbolic womb, representing the king's rebirth in the afterlife. A few insist it was for sacred objects or rituals. And of course, there are always those who swear it hides secret treasure rooms we haven't cracked open yet. You kneel, run your fingers across the floor, and feel the faint hum of history beneath your skin. No, really, it almost seems alive, as though the limestone still remembers the chisels that shaped it, the prayers that echoed here. You close your eyes and imagine the workers, coughing, sweating, never knowing their sweat would soak into walls still standing millennia later. From the Queen's Chamber, the passage dips further downward, into the unfinished subterranean chamber. You shuffle into the gloom until the air turns damp. Damp. Here, beneath thousands of tons of stone, moisture lingers like trapped breath. The ceiling is rough, hacked in haste. The floor uneven, ridged, abandoned mid-shift. And that's exactly what it might be. Archaeologists call this the basement that went nowhere. Perhaps Khufu's first burial plan, before the design evolved upward. Or maybe left raw, symbolizing the chaotic underworld. Some say it was just a pit, a red herring carved into bedrock. You stand in the damp hollow, listening. Your footsteps echo in strange ways, like the chamber itself is humming back at you. Researchers noticed this too. The chamber has acoustic quirks. Some frequencies resonate eerily, amplifying chants into bone-shaking vibrations. Picture priests chanting here, their voices magnified until the pyramid thrummed like a massive stone speaker. Ancient surround sound. You almost expect the bass to drop. Others point to the unfinished look and shake their heads. To them, it proves the pyramid wasn't mystical or alien, but very human. Flawed, trial and error. Yet the mystery remains. Why was it dug? Why abandoned? Why sealed in silence? You look back and realize something subtle. The pyramid is a vertical map. From chaos below, through the queen's chamber in the middle, to the perfected king's chamber above, like a soul's ladder, rising from disorder to divinity. Still, the debate continues. Planned symbolism or just stories we project onto stone? You laugh softly. Humans can't resist turning rocks into stories. A trickle of dust falls from the ceiling. Above you looms millions of tons. You suddenly feel like an ant under a mountain. You back toward the passage, comforted by the thought of open desert air. As you crawl upward, the image lingers. An underworld carved into stone, abandoned, yet strangely intentional. Maybe Khufu wanted it that way. Maybe it's the pyramid's way of reminding you. For every chamber aligned to the stars, there's also raw earth below, dark, damp, imperfect. And both belong to the same story. The passage lets you out like a throat spitting you into the desert air. You stand blinking, half blinded by the sunlight, after so long beneath granite ceilings. The Giza Plateau stretches before you, dusty, hot, relentless. The pyramid looms behind, its stone flanks glowing in the sun like a titan's shoulders. But now, instead of peering into secret chambers, you look outward. The question shifts. Who built all this? Whose hands pulled the ropes? Whose backs bent under blocks heavier than SUVs? Because it wasn't just kings and priests here. It was tens of thousands of people, sweating, eating, laughing, and probably complaining about sore feet. You imagine the workers' village, the one archaeologists uncovered southeast of the pyramids. Rows of mud brick barracks, bakeries, breweries, even medical facilities. This wasn't a ragtag group of slaves whipped into submission, like old Hollywood wanted you to believe. No, the evidence paints a very different picture. Here's a fun fact. They ate meat. Lots of meat. Archaeologists found piles of cattle bones near the workers' settlement. So many that it would have made medieval kings jealous. Grain silos stored wheat for bread and beer. Yes, beer, thick, porridge-like, but nutritious and safer than Nile water. Imagine a lunch break. Flatbread, roasted beef, a jug of beer. Honestly, not bad for a day on the world's largest construction site. And these people weren't slaves. They were skilled laborers, rotating crews, conscripted for part of the year like a national service. Farmers came when the Nile flooded their fields and returned home after the season. Some were permanent specialists, stonecutters, engineers, overseers. Their graffiti still scrawled on hidden blocks. Crew names like the Friends of Khufu or the Drunkards of Menkor. Workers with inside jokes, just like any job site today. You picture them pulling ropes in rhythm, chanting like a stadium crowd, sweat dripping off their noses. Teams of 20 hauling sledges, pouring water on sand to reduce friction. Yes, that actually works. Scientists tried it and found that wet sand cuts the drag almost in half. ancient life hack unlocked. And there were the engineers measuring angles with sighting rods, lining up the pyramid so precisely it's off true north by only a fraction of a degree. Even your phone's compass app isn't that accurate. They probably used the stars, circling the pole star at night, marking the sky's slow rotation. Think of surveyors crouched on scaffolds, squinting at the heavens, while gnats bit their ankles. Daily life wasn't all glory. Broken bones and arthritis marked their skeletons. But here's the twist. Their bones also show signs of healing. Injuries treated, bones set, nutrition supplied. The workers weren't disposable. They were cared for. That's not how you treat slaves. That's how you treat a workforce you value. And still, the scale is mind-bending. Over 2 million blocks, some weighing as much as 80 tons. You wonder, how do you even organize that? Picture the site like an ant colony. Some quarrying limestone nearby, others dragging granite from Aswan, 500 miles upriver. Still others ferrying copper chisels, ropes, wooden sledges. Supervisors barking orders, messengers darting through the dust, scribes tallying deliveries on clay tablets. At night, the workers lit fires in their village. You can almost hear the crackle of meat roasting, the laughter of tired voices, the thump of drums echoing against the dark pyramid silhouette. Someone probably grumbled, "Why couldn't Khufu just build a nice small mastaba like his granddad?" Another joked about how many lifetimes it would take to finish the thing. Little did they know, people would still be talking about them thousands of years later. Still, not all was camaraderie. Hierarchies existed, overseers wielded authority, and punishments likely kept order. You imagine the sting of a reed whip on bare legs for a worker slacking off, or extra rations for crews who hauled faster. Human motivation, stick and carrot, older than the stones themselves. Archaeologists debate the exact number of workers. Some say 20,000, others 30,000, maybe more during peak construction. But whichever figure you pick, it's astonishing that such a relatively small community raised something that could still tower over Manhattan apartments. And perhaps that's the greatest hidden secret of the pyramid. Not the chambers, not the shafts, but the people. Ordinary Egyptians, conscripted farmers, skilled masons, bakers, brewers, medics, all converging in one project that outlived them all. As the stars returned each night, workers stretched sore limbs on reed mats, gazed at Orion's belt, and maybe whispered, "That's where Khufu will go." Then they drifted to sleep with dust still caked under their nails. And you, standing in the desert now, can almost hear them snoring. You blink sand from your eyes, still tasting the dust of the workers' village. And then you realize something. The meat and beer are only the easy part of the story. What really rattles your brain is the logistics. How do you take stone from one place, drag it miles across a baking desert, and stack it higher than a cathedral without cranes, diesel, or even duct tape? Tonight, you're going to walk through the world's most audacious construction project, step by step, ramp by ramp. First, the quarries. Imagine limestone cliffs yawning open near the plateau, sunlight striking pale walls as men swing copper chisels and pound dolerite balls into the rock face. The air is filled with the metallic ring of hammer on stone, chips flying like sparks. Limestone blocks for the pyramid's bulk were cut locally, so you'd see a constant stream of workers sweating, levering, dragging blocks out of trenches carved into the bedrock itself. Then there's the Tura limestone, dazzling white, smoother than marble, used for the casing stones. Those came from across the Nile, ferried on barges. Picture massive rafts swaying downriver, sails snapping, boatmen shouting at each other. The Nile wasn't just a river, it was the artery that kept the pyramid alive, pumping stone like blood into the heart of Giza. And the granite? That was the cruel part. Aswan granite, rosy pink, dense as a stubborn boulder in your backyard, 500 miles away. Each block could weigh up to 80 tons, like moving a herd of elephants, but less cooperative. Workers cut trenches, hammered with pounding stones, wedged them free. Dragging them to the Nile took weeks. Loading them onto barges? Don't ask. If you think moving a couch up 3 flights of stairs is a nightmare, try maneuvering an 80-ton block with ropes and no hydraulics. So how did they get these blocks up the pyramid? Cue the ramp debate, one of archaeology's longest-running soap operas. Straight ramps, zigzag ramps, spiral ramps, every scholar has a favorite theory. Picture a giant mud brick ramp stretching from the pyramid, maybe a mile long, sloping gently upward. Or ramps hugging the sides in corkscrews, like stone roller coasters frozen mid-spin. The funny part? Nobody knows for sure. The ramps were dismantled after construction. What's left are clues: rubble piles, scars in the rock. Archaeologists still argue, hands waving at conferences, each swearing their ramp was the one. Some even propose hidden internal ramps spiraling inside the pyramid itself. It's basically the Egyptian version of, how do you build IKEA furniture without instructions? Only scaled up by a few million. Here's a detail you'll love. Experiments show that with enough men, wet sand, and wooden sledges, you can drag multi-ton stones fairly efficiently. In 2014, researchers found a wall painting of workers hauling a statue, while a man pours water on the sand ahead. Science caught up, confirming it wasn't artistic flair, it was engineering genius. The Egyptians hacked physics with a bucket of water. But logistics weren't just about stone. Imagine the supply chain. Workers needed bread, beer, tools, sandals. Every chisel blunted after hours, rope frayed, sledges broke, oxen died. Behind every block laid was an army of support staff: smiths, carpenters, potters, brewers, scribes. A living economy revolved around that one colossal pyramid. And think of the project management. You can almost picture a foreman shouting, "We're behind schedule on the granite. Who approved this delivery?" Then a scribe mutters, "You signed it, sir." Same headaches as your office project, just louder and dustier. Night falls again. The pyramid glows faintly under moonlight, its unfinished steps like terraces. Ramps snake across the plateau, dark silhouettes against the stars. Fires burn along the causeways, shadows stretch like ants across the sand. Somewhere, a boy runs with a jug of water for his father hauling ropes, while an overseer checks tallies by lamplight. The pyramid doesn't rise block by block. It rises heartbeat by heartbeat, every person a tiny gear in the machine. But here's where the mystery creeps in. Some casing stones fit so tightly together, you can't slip a razor blade between them. How did they do that with copper chisels and wooden mallets? Precision like that feels alien, almost machine-like. Scholars shrug, pointing to careful measuring and manpower. But late at night, you can't help but wonder, was there some trick we still don't understand? And while you're pondering, the thought sneaks in, all this for one man's tomb. The logistics weren't just engineering, they were propaganda. The pyramid shouted, "Look what a god king can command." Every ramp, every block, every loaf of bread was a line in Pharaoh's eternal resume. As dawn breaks, You picture barges unloading stone, oxen straining at ropes, men singing in rhythm. The pyramid rises not in silence, but in thunder of labor, laughter, curses, and sweat. And when you tilt your head back, watching it grow, you can't shake the thought. This was humanity's first skyscraper, a project manager's fever dream, and an ancient version of Amazon logistics, wrapped in limestone. The dawn slips over the horizon like molten gold, and the desert hums to life once again. You stretch, your skin sticky with the memory of dust and sweat, and you realize something important. Dragging blocks was only half the story. The pyramid wasn't just about engineering. It was a glowing billboard in stone, shouting across time about the divine authority of kings. Tonight, you're not just looking at limestone, you're stepping into the realm of royal symbolism. You see, in the world of ancient Egypt, the pharaoh wasn't simply a ruler. He was Horus incarnate, the falcon god walking in human form, the living bridge between heaven and earth. The pyramid, rising like a mountain from the desert floor, wasn't designed merely as a storage locker for his body. It was a cosmic elevator, a stone staircase to eternity. Close your eyes for a second and picture the shape. Four triangular faces converging at a single point, anchored perfectly on the cardinal directions. To your modern eyes, it looks like geometry. To theirs, it was theology carved in stone. That sharp peak aimed directly at the heavens symbolized the Benben stone, the primordial mound of creation. According to myth, it was the first land to rise out of the waters of chaos at the dawn of time. By mimicking that shape, Pharaoh was aligning himself with creation itself, declaring, "I am the axis of the universe." And those smooth, white casing stones, now mostly gone, would have shimmered under the sun like polished ivory. Imagine a mountain so blinding in daylight that you'd need to squint to even look at it. At night, under a full moon, it would glow like silver. Symbolism baked right into architecture, the pyramid became both sun and star, reflecting Ra's eternal fire by day and guiding Pharaoh's soul through the constellations by night. You wander further, and priests whisper in your ear, the Great Pyramid wasn't just a tomb, it was a resurrection machine. Those air shafts, narrow channels leading out of the burial chamber, weren't for ventilation. They were star paths. Scholars have measured them. One points toward Orion's belt, the constellation associated with Osiris, lord of the underworld. Another lines up with Sirius, the star linked to Isis. Together, Osiris and Isis were the power couple of eternity, promising rebirth. The shafts were Pharaoh's exit tunnels to the stars, his celestial launch pads. Now pause and picture the people of Egypt. They're not just laborers moving stone, they're participants in a divine drama. When they looked at the pyramid, they didn't see backbreaking construction. They saw their king ascending, carrying their world with him, securing the balance of Ma'at cosmic order. In their minds, every block stacked was another guarantee that the sun would rise tomorrow, the Nile would flood again, and chaos would stay locked away. Of course, not everyone was convinced. Some workers must have whispered doubts under the stars, brushing sweat off their brows. Really? All this stone so one guy can have a golden coffin? Yet the belief was strong enough to hold a nation together. Think of it like your modern billboards or skyscrapers, a symbol that says, "This is who we are. This is our power." Only instead of glass and steel, it was millions of tons of limestone, radiating divine legitimacy. And here's a curious little fact. Ancient Egyptians called the Great Pyramid not the pyramid, but Ake Khufu, meaning horizon of Khufu. Isn't that poetic? The horizon isn't just where the sun rises. It's the line where heaven meets earth. That name alone tells you everything. It wasn't a building, it was a gateway. Still, historians argue even now, was the pyramid truly built for religious symbolism? Or was it a flex of political propaganda? Was Khufu a pious man preparing for eternity, or a power-hungry ruler forcing his people to build his resume in stone? Scholars still debate the degree of coercion, the balance between faith and fear. One thing's certain, symbolism wasn't optional. It was the foundation. You tilt your head back, staring up at the unfinished pyramid shimmering in your mind. The ramps you saw in Section 12 are still there, snaking upward. But now you notice something else. Priests climbing those ramps, chanting hymns, carrying incense that curls like soft smoke against the sky. Every block isn't just stone, it's a prayer. Every joint isn't just precise, it's cosmic alignment. The desert wind whistles, and you can almost hear the workers singing in rhythm, not just to keep pace but to sync themselves with something larger. Even their sweat became holy water, sanctifying the monument. You realize the pyramid wasn't built by slaves, or even by laborers in the modern sense. It was built by believers, or at least by people who couldn't escape belief, their daily grind braided with sacred purpose. Of course, you can't help but smile at the irony. Pharaoh wanted eternity, and eternity came, but not in the way he imagined. He expected to rise as a star, burning forever in the night sky. Instead, he's remembered because tourists line up with selfie sticks, and scholars argue over ramp angles. Still, there's a kind of poetic justice in that. Eternity isn't always what you plan, it's what the future chooses to remember. The night deepens, and you feel the pull of stars overhead. Orion tilts across the sky, Sirius flashes like a diamond, and the pyramid gleams in your imagination. You realize you're not just watching a building, you're watching a cosmic performance, a drama written in stone, staged for the gods. And whether Khufu was a tyrant or a visionary, one thing is undeniable: his pyramid still works. You feel it tugging at you, pulling your thoughts upward, whispering, look higher, aim beyond, step onto the horizon. The desert shifts again, pulling you into another layer of the story. You've stared at kings and their starry ambitions long enough. Now it's time to step down from the glimmering limestone heights and walk barefoot into the dusty streets where the real heartbeat of Giza pulsed, not in the pyramid's shadow, but in the workers' village. You smell it before you see it. The smoke of bread ovens drifts toward you, thick and warm, mixed with the earthy tang of beer brewing in clay jars. Yes, beer. Not the hoppy craft IPA you might order after work, but a thick, porridge-like brew, filling and slightly sour, drunk by men, women, even kids. It wasn't about partying. It was hydration, nutrition, and morale all in one foamy cup. Honestly, if your boss paid you in beer rations, you might move a couple of stones yourself. Step closer and you notice rows of mud brick houses, maybe 100 of them, clustered around communal courtyards. The villagers' lives were busy but surprisingly organized. Archaeologists have unearthed bakeries, fish cleaning stations, even cemeteries, for the workers who never made it home. These weren't slaves chained to blocks. They were state employees, a rotating labor force who came for months at a time. Think of it like ancient Egypt's version of a government project, complete with room, board, and enough bread and beer to fuel the endless grind. You hear the chatter of women kneading dough, their hands dusted white like clouds. Children chase each other through the alleys, barefoot and giggling, while men rest their aching backs against sun-warmed walls. A priest passes by, reminding them that their sweat supports Pharaoh's eternal journey. Everyone plays a part, from the boy carrying onions to the stonemason chipping away at granite. It's not glamorous, but it's life, and it's oddly humanizing. Here's a fun twist. Workers weren't paid in coins because coins didn't exist yet. They were compensated in food rations: bread, beer, sometimes meat. On lucky days, cattle were slaughtered, and the smell of roasting beef rolled through the village like a festival. Imagine how morale spiked on steak day. Archaeologists have found bones showing these workers ate surprisingly well, better than many farmers in the countryside. Being part of pyramid construction wasn't just labor, it was a ticket to steady meals and social standing. Still, life wasn't easy. Bones unearthed reveal arthritis, broken limbs, and worn joints, bodies battered by stone hauling. Some injuries healed, evidence of medical care. Picture that. A worker wrapped in linen bandages, lying on a reed mat, while a healer mutters prayers and applies honey as antiseptic. This wasn't a faceless workforce, it was a community. People lived, loved, argued, and nursed each other back to health, all in the pyramid's shadow. And you can't help but laugh. Graffiti scratched into stones reveal team names like Friends of Khufu and the Drunkards of Menkor. Can't you just imagine them scrawling jokes after a long shift? They weren't cogs in a machine. They were people full of personality, leaving echoes of themselves in hidden corners. But here's the part no one puts on postcards. The village also reeked. Picture open drains, fish guts baking under the sun, sweat-soaked tunics never rinsed clean. Archaeologists find parasitic worms in the soil, proof that stomach cramps were as common as sandstorms. The glamour of eternity had a grimy underbelly. Pharaoh glowed in gold leaf, while his builders scratched at lice under the stars. The contrast makes you shake your head. Yet there's something quietly noble here. Despite the aches, the stench, and the monotony, these people contributed to something that would outlive them all. Imagine being a farmer brought to Giza, handed a chisel, and told, "You're building a mountain for the gods." It's hard not to feel pride, even if you collapse at day's end. And scholars? They're still arguing. Were these workers volunteers fulfilling duty, or laborers drafted, unable to refuse? Was life in the village a privilege or a burden? The truth probably lies in between: faith, obligation, and the promise of a full belly. The sun sinks lower. Workers gather for a meal. Clay lamps flicker, casting shadows against mud-brick walls. Laughter drifts through the night, mixing with drums and hand claps. For a moment, you forget the scale of the pyramid looming above. You just see people living their lives, making the best of their place in history. And in that quiet glow, you realize something profound. The Great Pyramid isn't just Khufu's tomb. It's also a monument to every nameless hand that lifted, hauled, baked, brewed, and bandaged. Without them, the stone would have stayed scattered in the desert. With them, eternity rose from the sands. You lie back, the village settling into your imagination like a warm blanket. Somewhere nearby, a mason sharpens his copper chisel. A child curls against his mother's side. A priest whispers a prayer to Ra. And you, drifting deeper into their world, hear the faint hum of voices, carried on the desert wind. The desert whispers shift again, curling around your ears like dry silk. You leave the workers' village behind, with its chatter, bread smoke, and aching bones, and wander back toward the looming pyramid. Its silhouette cuts against the night sky like a blade of stone. But this time, your attention isn't on the stones themselves. It's on the invisible veil that supposedly wraps around them. You've heard the stories, haven't you? The infamous curse of the pharaohs. The one where explorers drop dead after opening tombs, and whispers ripple that some ancient magic has reached out across time to swat them down. Hollywood loves it. Mummies unraveling from linen, glowing eyes in the dark, ominous hieroglyphs promising doom. But here's the catch. The pyramid's walls don't actually have any curse carved into them. No "enter here and perish" etched in hieroglyphs. If Khufu cursed anyone, he was subtle about it. Instead, what you find is more psychological. Imagine trudging into a sealed chamber, torchlight licking the limestone, air stale and thick after thousands of years. You're breathing dust that hasn't stirred since before Cleopatra wore eyeliner. If your heart doesn't race at that, you might want to check for a pulse. And if something scratches behind you, well, good luck convincing yourself it's just a rat. That's how curses are born, in the human imagination, where silence feels alive. But let's be fair, some strange things did happen. You recall Lord Carnarvon, sponsor of Tutankhamun's tomb excavation, dying suddenly after a mosquito bite turned septic, fueling global headlines about the mummy's curse. Never mind that his health was already failing, or that thousands of others entered tombs without incident. The narrative stuck. It's irresistible. Humans crave patterns, even if we have to invent them. Here's the quirk. While the Great Pyramid lacks a flashy curse, Egyptians certainly believed in magical protection. They had whole spells designed to ward off tomb robbers, invoking jackal-headed Anubis, or fiery cobras ready to strike intruders. In smaller tombs, you sometimes find warnings etched in red ochre, phrases like, "All who enter here without pure hands will be devoured by a crocodile." Not exactly a warm welcome mat. So while Khufu's monument keeps quiet, it's not crazy to imagine that an aura of danger clung to it, passed down in whispers. And in a way, maybe the curse was real, just not magical. Consider this: when ancient chambers were unsealed, explorers inhaled toxic mold spores, breathed in centuries of bat droppings, disturbed pockets of preserved bacteria. Scientists argue that more than one mummy's cursed death was actually pneumonia or septic shock, the grim side effect of curiosity. You don't need a hex when microbiology's got your back. Makes you wonder, if hand sanitizer had existed in the 1920s, would the curse of the pharaohs even be a thing? Still, you can't shake the mood. Imagine yourself wandering near the pyramid at night. The desert is too quiet, the stars too sharp. You brush your hand against the cool stone, and suddenly you feel like someone's watching you. Not with eyes of flesh, but with something older, heavier. Maybe it's Khufu himself, peering out from the afterlife, annoyed you scuffed his eternal stairway to heaven. Maybe it's just your imagination, but admit it, you'd walk a little faster back to camp. Archaeologists still debate this strange mix of myth and reality. Was the curse a clever piece of propaganda meant to deter thieves? Or is it modern myth-making, amplified by newspapers desperate for drama? The truth seems tangled. What's certain is this: fear is powerful, and the Egyptians understood that better than anyone. Fear protects tombs just as well as stone walls. And yet, here's the oddest part. For all the stories of curses, thousands of workers, priests, and visitors walked in and out of pyramid chambers during construction and rituals. No records suggest mass hauntings or sudden misfortune. Maybe curses don't scare the people who actually believe in them. Maybe they're potent only for outsiders, stumbling into a world they don't fully understand. The breeze stirs at your back, dry and cold. You glance up, half expecting glowing hieroglyphs above the pyramid. But there's only the night sky, infinite and indifferent. Still, the hairs rise on your arms. You can laugh at curses all you want, but standing alone in the desert, it doesn't take much to feel small, fragile, and slightly doomed. You keep walking. Each crunch of sand underfoot echoes in your ears. Somewhere a desert fox yips, Somewhere else, a bat flutters. And you? You wonder if Khufu is smiling, enjoying the idea that 5,000 years later, people still feel a chill, just thinking about his house of stone. The night doesn't feel like night anymore. Feels like a pause, a hush, drawn across the world, a soft curtain pulled between you and everything else. The pyramid is no longer stone and shadow. It has become something lighter, something woven from breath and memory. You can barely tell if it's still there, or if it has already dissolved into the stars above. Your body is so heavy now, as though the sand has taken on the kindness of a mattress, holding you in its arms. And yet your thoughts are feather light, drifting upward, brushing against constellations that don't care about names. Each star twinkles like a sleepy lantern, guiding you deeper into the slow unraveling. You think of the workers again, faint silhouettes in your half-dreaming mind. They are no longer hauling blocks or sweating in the sun. Instead, they sit quietly, backs against the stones, humming a rhythm that feels like it could go on forever. The tune has no words, but you understand it anyway. Tells you that time itself is patient, that even the mightiest monuments eventually become lullabies. The desert breathes around you, long, slow, steady. You sync with it without trying. The rise, the fall, the hush. It's the same rhythm you've known since before memory, the one you learned in the safe dark before birth, the one your body never forgot. And still, the pyramid listens, not as a guardian now, but as a witness. You realize it doesn't need to reveal every secret, not tonight, not ever. The silence is a gift, not a riddle. You're allowed to rest, without solving anything. You smile faintly at that thought. How rare is it in your world to sit with a mystery without needing to pick it apart? Maybe this is the true hidden secret of Giza, that peace is sometimes found not in answers, but in surrender. Your vision is barely a flicker now, your thoughts almost liquid. The desert has blurred into one soft shade, and the pyramid folds itself into the dream. So you let go. You let the questions fade. You let the weight of history become nothing more than a gentle story, whispered through stone. You let your breath match the desert's, slow and calm. And then there is only the hush, only the stars, only the soft hum of a world that has always been older than you, wiser than you, but endlessly patient with your small presence. And it says, without words, rest